All right, let's bring her in. She is the Back to Love Doc on Instagram. She is a multi-time guest on this show. She is a relationship expert and a licensed psychologist. It's Dr. Diane Strachowski. Dr. Diane, thanks for coming on.
Hello, Steve. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
I just wanted to bring you on since we are through hometown dates of Jenn's season. And obviously we've had 7 episodes now of her season. And I kind of overall wanted to just ask you, when you saw Jenn was announced as the Bachelorette, as you've watched her first 7 episodes, your thoughts on Jenn as a lead this season.
Well, Steve, I really like Jenn, and she is growing on me. At first, I'll be honest with you, I thought she was a little bit young, a little more playful. I didn't expect much from her, but I have to say, I always want to know more about the character. I want to know more about her work, her background, etc. And we don't get as much as I'd love. But she's definitely grown on me. And I think she has the skills to make the men comfortable, to get the men to open up. And I think her training as a physician's assistant, I mean, you have to be an empathic person to really sit with patients who are ill, etc. And I think her training in that area has really helped. And I actually have been most impressed with how she's handled Sam, how she handled Sam M. So to me, it was like, people have been like, why did he stay around us? I'm like, listen, we've had leads who have kept, even Charity, who was a therapist, kept Xavier to fantasy suites. So I was not surprised it took her that long, but I really like her level of questioning. She's good with the follow-up. Like, tell me more. What do you mean? And so I think she's got a nice level of empathy. I think she did great with the parents too. Last night, we're going to get to that, but I really do think she's growing on me, and I think I'm hopeful.
One of the narratives surrounding Jenn this season, as told to us by her, is just always picked the wrong guy.
Right.
Great relationship. Nobody's met her family. She's never been in love. Nobody's ever told her I love you. Does that stem from something as simple as just a bad picker? She has expressed the fact that she did not have a great relationship with her father. And being a psychologist, I'm sure you've dealt with patients that didn't have great relationships with their fathers. And then it turns into they look for something in relationships to sort of replace that relationship they never had with their father. What do you see about Jenn's past that she's now bringing into any of these relationships?
Well, that's what I pay attention to right from the beginning, Steve.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The narrative about her dad, not even knowing her birthday. I was like, oh my gosh, poor thing. Right. And so what's interesting is oftentimes back to attachment styles. We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
When you have a parent who's there for you sometimes, not other times, what you get like addicted to is the working hard. Okay. So if my parent's not there and I have to work hard to get their attention, then I learn that love is working hard. So then I'm attracted to narcissists that are hard. And right from the beginning, she said she wants this ferocious love. I'm like, ooh, okay, what does that actually mean? There's a little bit of, I want it to be wild, but I also, there's something about this, I don't know, this wild meaning like ferocious, being fun, playful, but there is a level of work there. And so that concerns me just a little bit because I want to know that she's healed that. And then being able to say, oh, you kind of look like my ex. That's not good for me. That didn't work. I haven't heard her talk about therapy at all. I get the sense she's done some of it given her family history, but she hasn't referenced it directly like some of the other bachelorettes and bachelors have. So I would just be curious about that. That's a question mark for me.
Is it something to where that she is looking for, is the word validation in men? Is that kind of what she's dealing with, or is it something not that way? She's not looking for validation because she seemingly never got any validation from her father.
Yes. You're looking for validation. You're looking for someone who, again, is going to fight hard. And I did a video myself on this. Like, this is what worries me a little bit. So when you say ferocious love and somebody fighting for you, do you set yourself up for somebody who love bombs you
Yeah.
then? Right? Because it's like, ooh, I'm really looking for that. Right. Now, what's also interesting is, a couple of the men, it was Sam N and even Grant said he was falling in love with her. And then she comes and says, no one's ever been in love with me. I'm like, wait a minute. They have on the show. We just saw two examples of men professing their love. But when it comes to love, the only ones that really matter to us is when it's mutual, right? The only time it matters is when I feel love and then you express love back and we both agree. So I thought that's why she got so excited when Devin said, I love you. And you saw her just like the smile on her face, because I do think she's falling in love with Devin. And you could just see that mutuality. And those are the ones that stick then, right? That's the time you remember being in love, when it was mutual.
Yeah. And I think that she is obviously someone who, throughout her past dating history, she has said, I've never been in love. She's had probably men tell her they love her,
Exactly.
in love with her.
Exactly.
She's never reciprocated it. And
Right.
she's always said, I've been in rough relationships. And you just wonder, with somebody like that who has never been in it sounds like just a healthy relationship. If she's never been in love, then has she really ever been in a serious relationship? My guess would be no. Can you be in a serious relationship if you've never been in love with somebody? Or is it just dating at that point? Yeah, I dated him. I liked him a
Well,
lot, but I wasn't in love. Is it serious?
I think we also have revisionistic history, right? We go back and it's kind of like, I mean, I myself, maybe you can relate, right? You've had some relationships or later you're like, what the hell was I thinking, right? Um, and then when we feel a level of love now, we're comparing it to back then, but we've sort of forgotten how we felt at the time, because we wouldn't have stuck around had we not had any feelings. But we go back and somehow people want to be on the show and report that this is somehow like a new love, right? Like love like they've never experienced because it happened so fast, and all of that. So I don't really think that we're good at giving our own history. I don't. Because your friends will go, oh my God, you were so in love with them, right? We just kind of forget.
So I wanted to talk about Sam M
Yes.
before we get to the hometown dates.
Okay.
And he's obviously been a major topic of
Yes.
conversation this year. And I think for him, I don't like throwing the word narcissism
Yes.
around. It's too deep of a word. He just seems like somebody who, obviously good looking guy, probably had it very easy with women his whole life
Yes.
because of his looks. Seems a little self-absorbed. I think that's a lighter term to use. I don't want to throw narcissism out there, but he definitely thinks very highly of himself and pitted himself against Devin from the get-go, and was in this competition to where, and we've seen this in the past before, where contestants on this show will say, I can't believe they like that person if they like me. We're totally different. But it is possible for Jenn to like Sam M and also like Devin and Marcus. They're not the same, all three of them. It is possible to like that, but he took it so personally. And I just wanted to know your outside opinion, just obviously off an edited version of this television show, what you thought of Sam M.
Well, I like that. And I'm exactly with you, because narcissism is a loaded topic and we would have to see a pervasive pattern. And we're just getting snippets. And again, it's highly edited. But I went back and I looked at a lot of the clips from Sam. And from night one, he was dishing on the guys, really negative. Guys were coming out of the limo. He had something negative to say about a lot of them. And so it just felt a little bit mean to me, like sort of like the mean girls. It's kind of like the mean guy. But what's also interesting is that Sam, in every single group date, he says, I've got this, right? And even he does the coming out of the limo, he did the shot o'clock thing, which, okay, lots of people have done, but he didn't bring a shot. right? He talked about it, but there was no behavior. And then there was someone else who also brought the shot o'clock and brought the little injectors, right, with like alcohol. And I
Yeah.
thought that's how you do shot o'clock. You actually have something. So to me, it's like Sam's a lot of talk, not a lot of action. Same thing in the strip tease. He's talking about this is my thing. I got this. And like in the practice, he looked better than he did on stage. It's like, Sam, there's something cringe there. And I saw a couple of moments where I thought Jenn got the ick for sure. Like she was attracted to him. But remember, also those girls, the other previous bachelorettes, they said, be careful. Don't choose the hot guy. And I think that really stuck with Jenn. And she's like, yes, he reminds me of people. I've seen this movie before, but a lot of talk. I'm great at this. Every single date at the beginning, this is my thing. And then I was just underwhelmed. So a lot of ego inflation, right? Lots of talking about himself and not a lot of awareness. Because then when we see that radio date in particular, which had a lot of cringe moments, at one point, later when she comes to him before she sends him home, he's like tripping over his words. He can't get it out. He's like, there's like a lot of word salad. We can't quite make out lots of words, but I'm not even sure what Sam's saying.
Yeah, it just really seems like whether it was just grasping at straws because maybe he knew he was going home, but to throw out the "I'm in love with you" card where based on the conversations that we saw, her and him, I mean, everybody could see it. This was a clearly physical relationship where they
Yes.
clearly were physically attracted to each other, but when they did have conversation, just didn't seem to be a lot of meat on that bone, didn't seem to be a lot of substance to it. It was just two people that were talking, and when he did talk, as I've mentioned a couple times, it was just about
It was about him.
it was about him, and it was
Yeah.
about certain things that are happening, and seems like he was taking memes from Nicholas Sparks books and quotes from all these different things he found online. It just didn't seem sincere.
Agreed.
Yeah, it was
I
just
felt
odd.
like Sam was auditioning to become the Bachelor. I do. I mean, and they did a whole promo on him, right? He's from South Carolina,
Yeah.
right? Carpenter, all of that, and yeah, I just agree. It felt um, just devoid of real substance, and Jenn saw through that, and that's how I think she handled herself really well. And I thought, we're like seeing this girl mature in front of our eyes, because calling that person out, I think, is really just like a confidence booster. You've got crazy chemistry. He got the first impression rose. And now she's saying, I need more than that. And I think it's going to be interesting because to me, it's like she's calling out Sam, but she's not calling out Marcus. He hasn't even gotten to how he feels about her.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is she going to be able to call him out? Because I think there's a different dynamic going on there.
So if we go to hometown dates
Yes.
and we kind of break it down, let's go kind of in order of what
Yep.
happened. Devin's hometown date was running, which I'm sure no lead wants to do. I don't care what face she put on, and maybe she likes Devin the best. Nobody wants to run.
It looked hot and sweaty. If
I
you
don't even
saw
think I don't even
Devin's
think runners
t-shirt.
I don't even think runners truly like running. I think they like the effect it has on their body, but
Yes.
to enjoy running for however long they ran for. I mean, they were
In
a sweaty mess.
Texas. Yeah.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
Houston, which is a
Yeah.
sauna
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
But so let's get to the part of the date that actually meant something, which was his family, his conversation
Yes.
with his mother.
Yes.
Devin said from the very beginning of this show, I'm a loud guy, like to be the center of attention. He's stayed true to that character for 7 episodes. I mean, he is very loud, speaks his mind. Didn't have another person that is on the show, didn't have a great relationship with his father, even
Yep.
though his father was at the hometown date. So
Yes.
was his mother and her new husband, or I don't know how long
Yes.
they've been married, but his stepfather. So we never ever heard. I mean, even though his father was there, surprised that we never got any clips of him talking to his father
Oh, we
about their
did.
past.
We
Did
actually
we?
got
I
we
might
did.
have blanked. It's
We
just sometimes it's
got
on
a
in the
moment.
background for me.
Tito?
Yeah, Timo.
Timo, excuse
Yeah.
me, Timo. We did, and in fact, while I was watching this, Steve, I thought when the mother watches this back, I wonder what she's going to think of it, because I thought I saw Devin backtracking a little bit, saying, "Dad, you've been so influential," and I'm like, "Oh no, that's not what we had heard prior to that." So I felt like he really was kind of in a bind, and I'd wondered if that's why he wasn't so nervous, because his mom is his cheerleader. Clearly, they have a strong relationship. I really liked the mom. She was really humble, and that tracked for me. But telling his dad what an influence he had, I was like, "Ooh, how's the mom going to feel?" So I thought that was his anxiety walking in, was dad being there.
Okay, I'll be honest. I think my food arrived during Devin's date,
Okay.
and so it was on, but I was eating and probably wasn't paying too much attention. So my mistake there. But he seems to have a really good relationship with his mom.
Yes.
Respected her,
Yes.
appreciated what she had done
Yes.
for him and
Yes.
growing up. So good to hear. And you mentioned it earlier, and it's interesting because Devin was the only one of the four, and he didn't, to drop the L word, and he didn't
Yep.
drop, "I feel myself falling in love with you." He
Yeah,
didn't
no.
drop, "I can see myself falling in love with you." He said, "Jenn, I love you,"
Yeah.
which is a big thing on this show,
Yep.
especially when the three hometown dates right after him, they couldn't even throw the word L in there, and they couldn't even say, "I can see myself going there with you." I'm not there yet, but I can totally see. It was really
I
weird, but that's a big thing. And like you said, Jen's reaction, I think, said a lot.
her reaction tells it all, but I actually found myself very endeared to Devin. I mean, I felt like the producers gave him a bad rap right from the beginning because he did steal Jenn on that group date, and Sam was so against him. But I I I think, and even on that sheep date, remember that he kind of pulled her aside and then he got extra time. That's what the lead should be doing. And I think he's so nervous because he cares. He really, also said, "I want to bring somebody home that I'm proud of and correct the wrongs." And so that is a narrative that they both have joined around. The single mom, single strong mom, not having a relationship with a father, even though dad's showing up late now. Um and, and so I think that's really where they as a couple have really been bonding around that narrative about, life is hard and they want to do it differently. um and there was actually that little moment where I did feel bad for the mom when Jenn was talking about that, like, wanting to do it different. And what I loved about mom was she was not defensive at all. She was very humble. She said, "Hey, I wasn't perfect, but I found love now." And, again, Devin was so nervous even walking in. He's like saying who they're going to meet. And then just Jen's like, "And your stepdad is there too." Like, she's paying attention.
Yeah.
And Devin was like, "Oh, yeah, 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 yeah." So I love that the grandmother was like, "Love you." I mean, I think it was just a lovely hometown. And I thought the mom, she really shined. "What do you love about my son? What stands out?" Of course, all parents are nervous. We're going to get to that, like what to do or what not to do. But I thought Devin's mom was exactly who he said she was: supportive, loving, kind, gracious. You saw the connection. I really like this hometown.
Now, for the second hometown with Jeremy, there were
Yes.
two things that stuck out to me. One thing that's just a big pet peeve of mine, and I think people need to stop saying it on the show, and then we'll get to what his mother thought of the whole situation. The first thing is, I am starting to get sick of contestants, and I feel like we get at least one every season, if not multiple every season, that will utter this line: "I only want to be engaged once. I only want to be married once." It's like, it's almost, I think we kind of know that as an audience. You don't need to say that to make it sound more important, I don't think, because I don't think anybody goes into an engagement and a marriage thinking, "Yeah, this will probably be one of two or one of three in my life." I don't care about it's like, of course you want to be engaged once. Let's stop. And when you think about it on this show, Jen's season is the 49th season of this show. There have been way more broken engagements than engagements. So to say it on this show makes it even more, it just rings hollow to me. And I think people just need to stop saying it. We get it. You don't want to be engaged.
I 100% agree,
It's
Steve.
like,
It's
of course,
it's
we
like
know
I've
that.
had it with that. And it's the same thing, like nobody enters into a marriage thinking they're going to get divorced. I mean, it goes without saying.
Yeah.
So I think what the person's trying to do is I'm taking this process seriously, right? That's what
Yeah.
they're really saying. And by saying I only want to do this once, that's how to let you know that I'm not here for the wrong reasons, right?
Yeah.
But there's other ways you could say it. I agree.
Yeah. It's just,
Yeah.
like I said, pet peeve of mine, drives
Yeah.
me nuts. And I feel
Yeah.
like at least one person a season says it, if
Yes.
not the lead saying it. Like, I
Yes.
only want to do this once.
Of course.
And it's different for the lead. It's almost more ridiculous when the lead says it, because the statistics show more often than not, it's not going to work out for you.
Right.
And we all know every Bachelorette, she's the 21st Bachelorette, even though we've had 23. Every single one of them's gotten engaged at the end of this thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And I think only 7 or 8 have ended up getting married, except for one, Jenn Sheft. But you know what I'm saying? Like 2/3 of them end up in a broken engagement. So to say I only want to be engaged once when you're the lead of the show is just, it's just throw that aside and just stop saying that.
Agreed.
The second thing was the mother, who was
Yes.
very skeptical. And we're starting to see this more on hometown dates in recent seasons, more skeptical parents about the process, how fast it is my child ready to do
Yes.
this? And I don't think any child on the show is ready to get engaged to someone that they've known for 7 weeks, where they don't spend a lot of time with them. But some parents express it a little bit more than other parents do. Other parents say, I trust my child, and if this is what they feel,
Yes.
I will support them.
Yes.
I saw an interview with Jeremy today where he said, look, I don't regret anything that happened on my hometown date. My mom did not ruin anything for me.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm happy to hear that.
He
Yeah.
did say that.
Okay.
But I think maybe he was just being realistic, and maybe he didn't want to say it in the interview. Just like, look, I kind of knew she wasn't picking me anyway. So that's why I don't think my mom ruined anything. But he didn't go there. But he did say my mom didn't ruin anything for me. Again, as a mother, when you're watching her as a mother, what do you feel about her and how she reacted to the whole situation?
Well, first off, I've got 2 grown stepsons, and I've oftentimes thought, oh my gosh, if I was on the show, what would I do? And having watched so many hometown visits, I do think, to your point, Steve, there's a right mix of saying, I trust you. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to be here for you. But I think to comment on the relationship, what I personally, as a pet peeve, I hate when people say, and she did this a couple of times, well, I just met you. That's another, like, I only want to be married once. Like, you can have a quick opinion. It takes us 15 seconds, by the way, in a first encounter with someone to form an impression. So to say, I just met you, or I haven't talked with you enough, it's like, you're getting the same amount of time that everybody else does. That to me felt a little bit hollow. And then keep bringing it back to her and her anxiety, and then saying, this isn't a game, this is serious. That to me, again, felt like, oh, mom, no, maybe she didn't mess it up. But I do think that you could at least help your kid make the hometown date neutral. And this to me really did have more of a negative than a positive, because Jenn herself said, the mom's skeptical. So I'm really basing it based upon Jenn's reaction to the mother, who pretty much said, like, how do you move forward? I mean, we saw this even with Rachel and Tino, right? And that was a big deal. How do you move forward when the parents are negative? And it doesn't end well. So my advice to the parents is just, you could say, I don't get this. This process is weird. It's so fast, but I trust my kid, and I hope they don't get heartbroken. I love to see you. This is a loving relationship. You look great. And if it doesn't work, we're going to be here. That's the best I think you can do.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think people appreciate sometimes when the parents are honest on the show and they
Yep.
question how fast this becomes. And
Sure.
it's just when you're watching it, sometimes it's a little cringy to watch because you feel like the parents are getting in the way. And it should just be a little more, like you said, neutral is
Well,
probably how I
so
should handle it.
so Steve, now this is just my take on it, but Jeremy himself says you don't have to be Jewish and that's okay. But I wondered if that wasn't something that the mom was picking up on.
Yeah, it's very possible.
Because in Jewish homes, usually it's the mother who is, creating the Judaism in the family. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the time it's the mother's kind of heritage. And if she was hoping to have, Jewish grandchildren and religion is an issue, then again, even though Jeremy has softened that, I just kind of wondered if there was something more there that we didn't hear or see. Um, because Jenn is completely lovely and I didn't hear anything else, but I'd wondered if that wasn't mom's wish or desire.
Yeah, and it could have been. And this was the first season that even the Jewish religion was discussed on a day when Jeremy had his one-on-one with Jenn. We've just never even heard a conversation like that before, where it was discussed in detail. They were talking about children, and she said, I'm Buddhist.
Well,
And he's
hold
like, I'm
on.
Jewish.
It was Zach's season. Ariel?
Yes, Ariel. That's right. Ariel did
Right?
talk about it on Zach's
Right.
season.
And
They
they
did a whole
went,
Jewish dinner,
they
right?
did.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm thinking we have kind of talked about it. Um, but yes, what I liked is how as a couple they were talking about blending Buddhism, Judaism. And again, it's one thing for kids to talk about it, it's another for if the parents are more traditional to understand how that's going to work.
Yeah. When I look at Jonathan's hometown date,
Yep.
the main thing that stuck out to me was, again, another guy, hey, past relationship, got really burned
Yes.
and really struggle saying that word. Everything with the family seemed to go fine with them. They liked her. She liked the family. Then they go outside. They sit in the backyard, and
Yep.
Jonathan comes up with this. He starts blushing, and she wants to get it out of him. She wants him to say the L word in some form or fashion.
Yes.
And he makes this big proclamation, which is, "I'm falling for you." I'm like,
Hmm.
in the context of this show, that is so low bar, especially when we've already had a guy tell her, I love you, Jenn. And this
Hmm.
guy at hometown dates, you're down to the final four, and all you could muster up is, I'm falling for you. Now, look, I don't want to shame Jonathan for not using the L word, but I think if you go on the show, you have to have this expectation of, man, I need to get there quicker. And if I don't, I'm probably not going to make it. Yes, maybe it is. People will see it as some of the men are just telling her what they think she wants to hear and what would make good television and what might make a good love story. Maybe some of them are forward thinking of how this is going to look on television. But just saying I'm falling for you when you're at hometown dates, it wasn't enough. And it fell so flat. She had to have been like, and she repeated, I'm falling for you too. It's like, but what does that mean in this show? I'm falling for you. What does that mean? Falling in like with you? Like, I don't know. It's not big enough for this show.
I agree, Stephen. I don't think this isn't Clayton, where he's really in love with three women. I don't think that at all. I don't see. I think Jenn is in love with Devin, and that feels really good because they have a lot in common. But I don't really see that. I did like Jonathan's mom a lot. The brother was skeptical.
Yeah.
What I thought was interesting is there was the sister-in-law who was really compensating. Like, I think she knew her husband was skeptical right from the beginning. And she's like, we met on Tinder and we said, I love you in 3 days. And, she was trying to connect with Jenn and really ease that through. And then the brother was like, oh, this is my baby brother. And he was the skeptical one. But the mom was lovely and said, I really like Jenn. And there was a really nice connection. Mom was really listening, saying, you adore my son. And I thought Jonathan, even playing lacrosse at the beginning, that was really sweet. I feel like it's not so romantic. To me, it just feels more playful, feels more like brother sister somehow. I'm not getting huge romance vibes with Jonathan, even though they're trying, right, with the rain on the date. But I just don't feel it.
I think one of the things we also got to remember when we watch this show, and I think people just tend to forget this, is that like the cast of men chosen for Jenn is not number one, it's not we're looking to cast the 25 most perfect fits for our lead. They're casting a television show. But the other thing is they're also casting just a wide net of men who want to be on TV. And it's like, it's not like these are 25 men that Jenn has spoken to in her life before. It's just like you show up the first night. Here's who we've chosen for you to choose from, Jenn. So it's like, it's more realistic that's as to why things don't work out because you're relying on a casting department to determine who's your best suitor out of these 25. And like I've always said, the ending is just you're just choosing who you liked the most out of the group that was chosen for you. You had no
100%.
say in choosing these men. It's just here's the men. Who do you like the best? And then go from there. And that's where we kind of end up with Marcus in the last hometown date. The thing that I found most interesting about this date was, and maybe his adoptive parents couldn't make it. Maybe they just they had something else going on. I found that to be a kind of a big deal when his adoptive parents didn't make the date. And the only blood he had on the date was his sister. He had one of his Army Ranger buddies there. He had a couple that I guess took him in after he got back from the Army that he's very close with. But Jenn saying, I can see myself fitting in with this family. You didn't meet his family. You met his sister and you didn't even meet his parents. You never spoke to his parents as far as we know, unless they had a Zoom call off camera that wasn't shown. And like I said, I don't want to shame the family for not showing up. They probably had their reasons, but I don't know if it was because we don't want to be a part of this or we couldn't make it out with our schedule. You know, just the idea of Marcus having his hometown date in Tacoma, Washington, when the guy lives in North Carolina, it's the other end of the map. Like they're not even, so I didn't even really understand. I think parents have to be a part of this hometown date for me to take it seriously. And I don't know what their reasoning was. But for that matter, I can't take the Marcus relationship seriously at all.
I'm not disagreeing. In fact, to me, this might feel harsh, but it felt like inviting all those friends, which was trying to like overcompensate for that.
Yeah.
Like, let's throw a party. I don't think I've ever seen, I was thinking in all the hometowns that I've ever seen all these extra people. I mean, maybe, of course, there's grandparents and aunts and uncles or something, but I've never seen this. Let's throw a party. So, it's like Jenn's walking into this and it seemed a little bit kind of shocking. And it's good to know that, like, wow, you have a lot of friends, right? That implies somehow that lots of people like you and that you're social. But I didn't feel like it was very intimate. And I didn't feel like it really moved their relationship forward because you're not getting that kind of information. And knowing Devin in his Army training or even post, it's not the same as knowing someone, obviously, when they were younger or growing up. And we do have to just pause for a moment because Devin's sad story about his
You mean
parents.
Marcus? You mean Marcus?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Marcus.
Yeah.
Marcus's parents dropping him off at daycare and never coming back. Oh, my God, what a story.
And in and out of foster care homes where they were going to different families and basically him saying like, well, they would just return us. Like it was toy, like they were toys.
Steve, I've worked at these places. I've worked at a place called Eastville Minquang in California where we work with residential kids who don't have parents. And it's so sad. And they're so wounded. And it's like that. And then going into the military with that trauma and his injury, it's a sad story. It really is. It's a tough, wounded story. And so that's where I'm like, what is the dynamic going on here? Because I he's just a big mystery, and I'm kind of surprised he's still there, to be honest with you.
Yeah, he's someone that when you look at it, another one just like Jonathan, but he's been a little more emotional. He's easily the most emotional man
Yes.
this season, has been brought to tears, I think, on every date he's been a part of at some point. And another guy having a very hard time opening
Yes.
up and dropping the L word. And he said the same exact thing that Jonathan is. I'm falling for you. And again, it just was like, okay,
Mhm.
well, what does that mean at this point? You need to be a little bit more wordy than that, or at least say the L word, but don't say I love you. Just
Right.
say I'm falling in love with you. I can see
Right.
myself falling in love with you in the
Right.
future, and excited to see where this goes. Just
Right.
some generic line, but to say I'm falling for you, like you said with Jonathan, it seems to fall a little bit hollow, and it's just okay. But what does that even mean in the context of this show? I don't know.
Yeah, and I was really, because to your point, Steve, the only family is sister,
Yeah,
and she, I felt like, was also really filtering her words and trying to be very careful what she said. But then there is that moment where Marcus and his sister are talking, and he chokes up about wanting to be a dad, and um, you know, they've really been through trauma together, and I I get worried about people with that kind of background being on shows like this. I worry for their vulnerability, and I'm sure there's a lot that's also come out about Marcus, and there's a lot of the subreddits, and we won't even get into that. But
yeah,
you know, I it goes without saying, and it's also cliche. People say, "Oh, you need therapy." It's like, well, but to be on a reality show, I just don't know the readiness for truly being present to someone like Jen. Yeah.
and that's on Marcus's end as a
Yes.
casting director
Yes.
for the show. He's gold because we've seen they love putting people on dates who have traumatic pasts because they I don't
100%.
know if they want to. I don't know if the word exploit is something that if we want to use it that way, but it just seems like the people who do get one-on-one dates all have some sort of trauma in their past. It's very rare that we get someone who has a one-on-one date who hasn't had any issues with family in the past or struggled with anything. It's just like, you know what, my life's been pretty cool. I'm 25 years old, things are going great, got a great job, great friends. It's just that everybody's got to have a story, and it almost seems like you come across boring if you don't have a story. Whereas people who don't have a story might not be boring. But for this show, you've got his story. You've got Jeremy didn't really have anything traumatic in his past that we that we
No.
that we know of.
Mm-mm.
But Devin not having a great relationship with his father. We got Marcus and his situation and being in and out of foster homes. And I think even Jonathan talking about his ex, who really, I think he said was substance abuse, or maybe that was, and Grant, our next bachelor, who was he the one that didn't have
Father was an alcoholic.
father was an alcoholic. It
Yeah.
just
And I actually like that Grant talked about kind of like confronting his dad for
yeah
making excuses, and then dad got into rehab, and I'm like, "Oh, good on Grant." Like,
yeah
he seemed like he's handled that well.
yeah.
Yeah.
It just seems like
Yeah.
you almost have to have trauma in your past to get cast on the show. If you're just too normal,
But
or
in
you
real life,
yeah
Steve, my advice to people is boring is good, right?
yeah
Boring is good. It doesn't make for great TV, but makes for a good relationship,
yeah
because life itself is going to provide you with context and drama. You don't need, the police coming or some other kind of, you know, real toxicity. You don't want that in real life. No.
um wanted to kind of end with these couple things. First off, we just mentioned him briefly, but Grant as the next bachelor,
Yes.
I think we're fine with him as a
Yeah.
as a contestant, as our bachelor lead. The way it was brought out was very suspect. I mean, they've never announced their lead the way they did, which was on the internet first, and then it took till the show ending on the West Coast before their social media accounts even promoted him as the next bachelor. He still hasn't done. He did Nick's podcast, so I guess that's his
Yes.
first foray into, hey, this is who I am. He got a hot seat on the Men Tell All, which we'll see next Tuesday. So that'll be his first interview for people who don't listen to Nick's podcast. That'll be his first like Bachelor Nation type interview, and we'll get to know him a little bit more. I'm fine with him as the lead. This franchise, when they were thrown under the bus by the LA Times back in May for their horrible lack of diversity on the show, I think that had a lot to do. I'm not saying this was some sort of token selection as The Bachelor, but when an executive producer of this show said back in May to the LA Times, if you don't want to see Asian representation, if you don't want to see interracial love, if you don't want to see Black people falling in love on the show, then maybe Bachelor Nation isn't for you. I kind of knew we weren't going to be rolled out with another white lead in September. It would have rang very, very hollow for them to literally tell that to the LA Times on a piece where they were crucified for their lack of diversity on the show, and then roll us out another straight white guy. Right. So I don't want to take anything away from Grant, but don't tell me that didn't play a role in why he was cast. And look, this is only our second male person of color to be the lead. They admitted they absolutely failed Matt James as bad as you could. So let's see them. Like, people can say it's performative or whatever, but at least they're trying, because if they did roll out another white lead, we'd be like, okay, where's the diversity on this show?
Well, what I like is that people do learn from one another. And I think the best, if I was going to go on the show and be the lead, I would just watch previous seasons, see what I liked, what I didn't. Kind of like when Charity came on to tell Jenn, hey, I wrote lists, and, you give advice and you learn things. And my only hope I didn't like how they announced it. It was very lackluster. Grant deserved more. Hopefully there'll be some retribution and he'll get a bigger spot. Get him on Good Morning America, do what we normally do. But the one thing I did consider, and you heard this, the producer said that they didn't want what happened to Jenn to happen to Grant, which was the guys didn't know who they were coming out of the limo for.
Yeah.
And we saw that with Sam, right? Saying, I didn't know if it was going to be Daisy. I didn't know if it was going to be Maria. And I really didn't like that. It wasn't fair to Jenn. And it's not going to be fair to Grant if you don't know who the lead is. And he's saying, I want you to know it's me and sign up for me. So I like that premise, but they still could have handled the announcement better and just give people more time. Because if I'm going to go on the show, I want to know who the lead is.
Yeah. And for the most part, most seasons, they don't know until they've already been selected as a contestant, and they just have to kind of go with it. And that's why this whole here for the right reasons thing is a legit concern, or a legit gripe that the people have with the franchise, because most contestants go on and they've been told you have been selected, and they don't find out until the lead is announced after the final rose. I want to end with this, and this is something that took off last year with Gary as our Golden Bachelor. We have Joan as the Golden Bachelorette starting up in a couple weeks from now, on September 18th. I believe is our open. You watch Gary's season, and now we've got a woman leading this show, the Golden Bachelorette. And your thoughts on why do you think that show, Gary's season, resonated? The most watched season this show has put out since COVID, since 2020, was Gary's season. Broke all sorts of ratings records for this show. And now, do you think we're going to have the same sentiment? Why do you think it resonated with people? And yeah, we had an uptick when Joey aired, and who was our last Charity last season. But Joan, do you think are we thinking, hey, this is going to continue and Joan's going to get the same response? Does Gary and Teresa's marriage failing after 3 months have an effect on Joan's season, and people be like, okay, well, we saw what happened last time. No matter how in love they looked, they couldn't even last 3 months. Or do we think it's just, I think I want to watch this because it does seem a little more pure?
Well, I think, back to your question, why did it take off so big? Because the people watching TV and not Hulu, et cetera, are older people. I mean, that don't, that have cable, that are watching the shows and are interested in it. And it's a low bar. It could be fun. You could watch with your women friends. You could have watch parties. I knew a lot of people who had never watched the show before who suddenly tuned in. My own mother, was watching it and really interested in it. I loved everything about it. I did. I thought they should have helped them travel. They should have gotten a longer season. I think there were things they could have done in normal Bachelor fashion that would have made it even better. But I just think they had no idea. Now, what I like about Joan, and I'm in the DMs with Joan, I was early on, and she said somewhere in an interview, though, I'm not going to make the same mistake that Gary and Teresa made. She's not in a rush to get married.
Mhm.
And I think what was really smart is choosing someone slightly younger. She's 60. Some of these other women were 70 and beyond. And I think actually a little bit of that pressure comes from life is short. If life expectancy is to 85, we should get going with this. And so I kind of feel, well, there's also a huge gap, right? We're going from 20, 30-year-olds to even 60-year-olds. What about the
Yeah.
40, the 50-year-olds, right? Like, where's the silver bachelor? I
Yeah.
still think there's a show there for those people. But I think Joan is going to be wise. She's already, privy to social media. She had already done some really cute TikToks and videos. I think she's really smart. And I had thought that Joan took herself out early. I know that the daughter had postpartum depression and she left, but I actually think she just wasn't feeling it for Gary.
Mm.
And she left, and she did with such poise, and she's an elegant woman. And I think they chose, just looking at the men, I think they chose some great men, educated men, successful men. They all look like, they're coming out of a Banana Republic ad, but I like the men that I've seen thus far. I'm excited.
Yeah, and just kind of bring this back to Grant. The fact that they announced Grant on the internet Monday night after the show ends, and the very next day we get Joan's Men, a 2.5-minute video on the Golden Bachelor ABC Instagram account where we're getting to hear them talk, we're getting to hear them speak, and just it's just like you didn't even obviously you're not going to announce Grant's women because you haven't chosen all of them yet, but announcing Grant on Monday night and then dropping Joan's Men the next day, it's just like, okay, where are the priorities here? Do they even want to focus on Grant's season? So that's obviously an issue in and of itself.
Well, and I do think, right, we have, no Bachelor in Paradise, right? We have, I don't know. I'd be curious, and I don't know what's going to happen even like next year, because so let's say the Golden Bachelorette does really well. Are we going to, we're going to have Bachelor in Paradise and then Golden Bachelor, Bachelorette, because now we're talking about a lot of seasons here, and they just need more people to film all of that. I can only imagine that's like a daunting thing. I mean, it could be a good problem to have if it becomes popular.
Yeah. So Grant's season will film September to November and start airing in January.
Right.
Then the Bachelorette, I'm assuming, will come from Grant's season. That'll film March to May.
Right.
Paradise films in June. But Paradise airs September. I mean, Paradise airs after Bachelorette. And we know we're having Paradise next year. So if there is a Golden Bachelor or a Golden Bachelorette next season, it would have to film either July or August of 2025. And then it would air. I don't think they're going to do the same thing they did in season 1 of Golden Bachelor, where it's Golden Bachelor for an hour followed by Paradise. It looks like it would be, we're going to air Paradise. And then if we're going to have a 4th season from our franchise air in a calendar year, looks like that would have to air November, end of October to December.
Well,
I think it's almost too much.
I think the only gap that there really is when Bachelor to Bachelorette, there is a gap, because
that's 2 months gap, 2-month gap there.
So that my only thinking is that we kind of, instead of squeezing in at the end of the year, do they get it in someplace else? Because maybe you put Golden Bachelor. So you do Bachelor, Golden Bachelor,
then Bachelorette, then Paradise.
Then Bachelor. I don't know. That's the only thing that I'm thinking.
And we don't even know. Maybe Joan will be the last season of the Golden era. But put it this way:
hope not.
if it does the numbers, or even close to the numbers, or even outdraws Jen's season, there's no way they're getting rid of it. So they've committed to Bachelor in Paradise, so that means we will have 4 seasons of this franchise in the year 2025.
I love the idea that it's never too late for love. I mean, that's my whole platform. I
Yeah.
work with older people. I found love later myself. To me, this is the message that resonates, that, you feel young again when you're falling in love. It doesn't matter how old you are. I really hope, to be honest with you, Steve, that we steer away from what I didn't like in The Golden Bachelor. It's more deep in the comments where like the women are like, did you wear sunscreen? They're kind of backsliding negative comments about the women and aging. And I'm like pro aging, and like, let's just talk about the love story as opposed to like what someone really looks like. Cause that to me just feels so, unidimensional. And I want something deeper than that.
Yeah, and we'll see. I mean, I'm looking forward to Joan's season. Really, really looking forward to seeing how this plays out and how it differs or is similar to Gary's season. So, Dr.
And
Diane,
Mark, Kelsey's
oh yeah,
dad is
and
like,
Kelsey's dad is on it. It was somebody that everybody wants to see.
yes.
Yes.
I'm
Find love.
thinking maybe he becomes the next Golden Bachelor. Who knows, right?
Yeah. Anyway, Dr. Diane, thank you so much for coming on. Always love chatting with you. I appreciate it. First time we get to do video. We'll obviously do it again in the future, maybe at the end of Joan's season. We'll have you back on.
Yes, I'd love to,
so.
because I've got my grandparent Barbies, because I have my Barbie collection. I got my older man and mature woman, and I'm ready to go. Cannot wait.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Diane, for coming on. And obviously, we'll be in touch. Take care.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.